This is in 11th grade. 11th grade lit. We just read incident at the window, went over the vocabulary. And so you got the situation. They see him for the first time in days or weeks. He says, he says he's very low. He doesn't say specifically, is he sick, got a cold, got the flu. He's very vague. He says, I'm very low. Fortunately, it won't last very long. How does he know that? I don't know. So they start to talk to him and says, well, I can't come out and walk with you, but let's talk. As soon as he says, yeah, let's have a talk, he closes the window and leaves. And they leave, and strange words by Utterson, God forgive us, God forgive, what does that have to do with it? It's just so weird. This is the last chapter in the book of action. And it's kind of a long chapter, but still, the book is short. And so, at the end of this chapter, the major events in the story will be over. What you have after that are two letters, one from Lanyon, describing what happened the night that Jekyll came to visit him, and they had a breaking apart of their relationship for good. And then remember, Lanyon dies. After that incident, something happened that was so startling that it kills Lanyon. And then the last letter is the best part of the book to me, because it's an explanation of the whole story. And so let's see what we can get there. Then the last night. This is, again, the action in the story ends at the end of this chapter.
Mr. Utterson was sitting by his fireside one evening after dinner when he was surprised to receive a visit from Poole. Bless me, Poole, what brings you here? He cried. And then, taking a second look at him, what ails you? He added, is the doctor ill?
Keep going. Read half the page.
Mr. Utterson said the man, there is something wrong. Take a seat, and here is a glass of wine for you, said the lawyer. Now take your time and tell me plainly what you want. You know the doctor's way, sir, replied Poole, and how he sets himself up. Well, he's shut up again in the cabinet, and I don't like it, sir. I wish I may die if I like it, Mr. Utterson. Sir, I'm afraid. Now, my good man, said the lawyer, be explicit. What are you afraid of?
I've been afraid for about a week, returned Poole, doggedly disregarding the question, and I can bear it no more. The man's appearance amply bore out his words. His manner was altered for the worse, and except for the moment when he had first announced his terror, he had not once looked the lawyer in the face. Even now he sat with the glass of wine untasted on his knee, and his eyes directed to a corner of the floor. I can bear it no more, he repeated. Come, said the lawyer, I see you have some good reason, Poole. I see there is something seriously amiss. Try to tell me what it is. I think there's been foul play, said Poole hoarsely. Foul play, cried the lawyer, a good deal frightened and rather inclined to be irritated in consequence. What foul play does the man mean? I daren't say, sir, was the answer. But will you come along with me and see for yourself? Mr. Utterson's only answer was to arise and get his hat and greatcoat, but he observed with wonder the greatness of the relief that appeared upon the butler's face, and perhaps with no less than the wine that was still untasted when he sat down to follow.
So it's the last night of something. It's the last basic chapter in the book. We don't really know what's implied by that, but all we know is that Poole comes to Utterson and says, I can bear it no longer, I'm afraid. I haven't seen him for a week. And so he's worried about, there's something about Jekyll he's worried about. Last time we saw Jekyll, it looked like he'd been sick. So he won't talk about it here. So Utterson and he go back to the house. They're going to find out what's going on. Ryan. And notice the setting here. Notice how the setting contributes to the actions in the story.
It was wild, cold, seasonal night of March. The pale maiden lying on her back as though the wind had tilted her and falling ragged the most diaphanous and longing texture. The wind made talking difficult and left the blood into the face. It seemed to have swept the streets unusually bare of passengers. Besides, for Mr. Utterson thought he had never seen that part of England so deserted. He could have wished otherwise. Never in his life had he been conscious of so sharp a wish. see and touch his fellow creatures. For startle as he might, there was borne in upon his mind a crushing anticipation of calamity. The square, when they got there, was full of wind and dust, and the thin trees in the garden were lashing themselves along the railing. Poole, who had kept all the way a pace or two ahead, now pulled up and drove up the pavement, and in spite of the biting weather, took off his hat and mopped his brow with a red pocket handkerchief. But for all their hurry of his tongue, these were not the dews of exertion, but that he wiped away with the moisture of some strangling anguish, for his face was white and his voice, and he spoke harsh and broken.
Well, sir, he said, here we are, and God grant there be nothing wrong. Amen, Poole, said the Lord. Thereupon the servant knocked in a very guarded manner. The door was opened on the chain, and a voice asked from within, "Is that you, Poole?" "It's all right," said Poole. "Open the door." The hall, when they entered it, was brightly lighted up. The fire was built high, and about the fire the whole of the servants, men and women, stood huddled together like a flock of sheep. At the sight of Mr. Hudson, the housemaid broke into hysterical whimpering, and the cook, crying out, "Bless God, it's Mr. Hudson," ran forward and taken him in her arms. What, are you all here?" said the lawyer peevishly. "Very irregular, very unseemly. Your master would be far from pleased." "They're all afraid," said Poole. Blank silence followed, no one protesting, only the maid lifted her voice and now wept loudly. "Hold your tongue," Poole said to her with a ferocity of accent that testified to his own jangled nerves, and indeed, when the girl had so suddenly raised the note of her lamentation, they had all started and towards the door, the inner door, with faces of dreadful expectation. "And now," continued the butler, addressing the night boy, "reach me a candle, and we'll get this through hands at once." And then he begged Mr. Utterson to follow him, and led the way to the back garden.
Robert.
I'm sure he said he would come as gently as you can. All you is here. And I don't want you to be hurt. And see here, sir, by any chance he was to ask you, and don't go. Mr. Utterson's nerves at this unlooked for termination gave a jerk that nearly threw him from his balance. But he gave a
He recollected.
recollected his courage and followed the butler into the laboratory, going through the surgical theater. With its number of crates and bottles to the foot of the stair, here Poole motioned him to stand on this side and listen, while he himself setting down the candle and making a great and obvious call on the resolution, mounted the steps, not with a somewhat uncertain and regretful phase of the cabinet.
One more sentence.
Mr. Utterson, sir, asking to see you. Called, and even as he did so, once more finally signed to the lawyer to give ear.
So Utterson and he are now in Jekyll's laboratory, and they go in, and then there's steps, and then there's another room, and so Utterson's at the bottom of the steps. I wouldn't expect there's just a few of them. Utterson goes to the door, knocks, and speaks to who's ever inside, presumably Dr. Jekyll. Side.
The voice answered from within. "Tell him I cannot see anyone," it said complainingly. "Thank you, sir," said Poole, with a note of something like triumph in his voice. And taking up his candle, he led Mr. Utterson back across the yard and into the great kitchen, where the fire was out and the beetles were leaping on the wood. "Sir," he said, looking Mr. Utterson in the eyes, "was that my master's voice?" It seems much changed," replied the lawyer, very pale, but giving look for look. "Changed? Well, yes, I think so," said the butler. "Have I been 20 years in this man's house to be deceived about his voice? No, sir, master is made away with. He was made away with 8 days ago, when we heard him cry out upon the name of God, and who is in there instead of him, and why it stays there is a thing that cries to heaven, Mr. Utterson."
All right, so you get the implication. Who does he think is in the room? Who does Poole think is in the room? Because the voice, they said, was not Jekyll. So who must it be? They think it's Mr. Hyde, and that, what do you think the implication is, what happened to Jekyll? Mr. Hyde killed Jekyll, and that's what they're assuming because the voice was so different. Emma?
Are we at well, Mr. Utterson?
This is a very strange tale, Poole.
This is a very strange tale, Poole. This is a rather wild tale, my man.
Like, think of the situation, if that were for Hyde and he killed Jekyll, why is he still in there? If he's a murderer, why does the murderer stay there, easily caught and eliminated? And secondly, Poole says, for days he's been calling out that voice, who's ever in there, has been calling out for medicine.
Just mine.
And the medicine, and he goes and gets the medicine, just like the doctor ordered. Literally, the doctor ordered it, and he goes to get it, or doesn't get it, and it doesn't work, whatever it is, because he keeps saying it's not pure. How about it, Louie?
Have any of these papers left, Mr. Utterson? Poole felt in his pocket and handed out a scrabble note, which the lawyer bending near the candle carefully examined. Its contents ran thus: Dr. Jekyll presents his compliments and viewers, Mom. He assures them that their last sample is impure and quite useless for his present purpose. In the year 18, Dr. Jekyll purchased a somewhat large quantity from Messrs. And he now begs them to search with its sedulous care, and should any of the same quality be left, should forward it to him at once. Expense is no consideration. The importance of this to Dr. Jekyll can hardly be exaggerated. So far, the letters had run composedly enough, but here with a sudden flutter of pen, the writer's emotion had broken loose. For God's sake, he added, find me some of the old. This is a strange note, said Mr. Utterson, and then sharply, how do you come to have it open? The man of Moz was man angry, sir, and he threw it back to me like so much dirt, returned Poole. This is unquestionably the doctor's hand. Do you know? Resumed the lawyer. I thought it looked like it, said the servant rather sulkily, and then with another voice, but what matters can, right, he said, I've seen him.
All right, so who's ever in there says it's not pure. Whatever he goes to get from the pharmacist, he says, get me some of the old stuff. So he brings it back, not quite, hang on. He brings it back, and they're not sure whose hand it is, whose handwriting it is, but he's gonna tell us that he's actually seen Mr. Hyde. And so, on Wednesday, I'm gonna tell you how we're gonna finish this, because we're not quite finished with it. We'll pick it up Wednesday, and I'll tell you about the test and the quiz when we come back. Just keep your seat until she comes out.
Thank you. I'm just gonna do whatever.
I think I'm just gonna do Baylor and then take all the
For parlay or just
Actually, no.
Because if I do, that way I'll win more than 150. Then I won't have to pay.
We have a whole conversation about what
Hey guys, just keep your seats till the bell rings.
Are you just doing the over-unders?
Yeah. I've never been in a straight line. Have you been stripping all this? Every single over under. And then every like one of those straight. Over under is all good.
It's like someone
They're like,
When they're
Guys, wait just a minute. Keep your seat.
I'll be staying in your seat. I'll stay near your seat. Stay near your seat.
Ladies, just wait a minute. We're not ready. We'll wait till she comes out.
And just proud of it. Tell us. You make balls and you're proud of it?
I didn't write that.
I'm like apologize for getting it wrong.
It's the school. Well, like, I wouldn't do it blind. It's like an old firm. It's like without having to say something.
She said I can't.
It's like a